Hello, dear students. I welcome you all on behalf of Sri Jayendra classes, rank zone classes. Dear student, I am your friend and mentor. In previous classes, we have initiated this chapter that is plant kingdom, and in that we have covered already the algae and a bryophyta. In today's lecture, we are going to discuss pteridophytes in detail. Now, if we understand this word pteridophyta, then this are somewhat evolved plant than the bryophyte. And if they are somewhat evolved plant than the bryophyte, then if we talk about this term pteridophyta was proposed by Haeckel. So pteridophyta, the term proposed by Haeckel. And the study of pteridophyte is known as pteridology. Study of pteridophytes is known as pteridology. And this pteridophyte are also known as reptiles of plant kingdom. Now the question is why they are known as reptile of plant kingdom, because they are mainly known to grow horizontally on the soil by attaching to the soil. So, like reptiles, they grow by attaching to the soil or with the soil or to the soil. Then they are, because of this, they are known as reptiles of plant kingdom. Then they are used for a medicinal purposes and as a soil binders as well. Just I had told you that they grow by attaching to the soil, means they are the soil binders, and some of the medicinal properties are also known that we are going to discuss in further part. One more important thing was noticed about this, that they are frequently grown as a ornamental. They are grown as an ornamental plant. For the decoration purposes they can be used. And evolutionary, they are the first terrestrial plant to possess vascular tissue. They are the first, means first vascular plant, we can say. These are the first vascular plant. They are first vascular plant, means these are the first plant in which xylem and phloem as a transporting tissue or conducting tissue they have developed. Then they are embryophytic, archegoniate, vascular cryptogams. See what this all term means. Embryophytic means embryo is present, means zygote after mitotic division it form embryo. Embryo formation first initiated in the bryophytes. Okay, in the previous class which we have, previous division which we have discussed, bryophyta, in which the embryo formation was started. Before that in algae it was absent. So these are the second embryophytes in which embryo is formed after the mitosis of zygote. Another thing, they are archegoniates. Here archegonia is a female sex organ, and that female sex organ is present in case of pteridophyte. Then they have vascular or tracheophytes, means they have xylem and phloem as a conducting tissue. And they are cryptogams. Cryptogams means they are a seedless plant in which seed formation has not observed. So these are the terminology, these are the things which are associated with the pteridophyte. Now, the pteridophytes are found in cool, damp, and shady places. It is observed that these pteridophytes are known to found in cool, damp, and shady places. Though some may flourish well in sandy soil condition, the usual occurrence is seen in the cool, dampy, and shady places. You may recall that in bryophytes, the dominant phase in the life cycle is gametophytic plant body. Haploid plant body, gametophyte type, is the dominant. But with respect to that, in pteridophyte, we come to know that the sporophyte is the main plant body. Dear student, you should remember this point in case of the pteridophyte, that main plant body is sporophyte. And this sporophyte is a diploid body. Okay, and here the thallus occurrence is not seen in case of the body of pteridophyte, because in a bryophyta we have discussed, in algae we have also discussed that there is a differentiation, there is no differentiation of the plant body. So they have a root like, stem like, and leaf like structure that is known as thallus. But in case of pteridophyte, the main body is differentiated into true root, stem, and leaves. That is differentiated into true root, stem, and leaves. And this organ possess a well differentiated vascular tissue. They are the first vascular plant. We have well differentiated vascular tissue, and in vascular tissue they have xylem and phloem. But dear student, when they have vascular tissue like xylem, in xylem they lack vessels. They lack vessels. So tracheids are the mainly responsible for transport in case of the xylem. And in case of phloem, they lack sieve tube and companion cell. Means they have sieve cell instead of sieve tube, and albuminous cell instead of companion cell. So this is the thing which are known to occur in case of, particularly we can say this, vascular plant. Okay, so that is the initial general information regarding them. Then the roots are adventitious. The roots are not arising from the radicle, they have adventitious root. Now, after root, if we talk, they have a true root actually, but after root, if we talk about the stem, then the stem is internally shows epidermis, cortex, and stele. Means internal division into epidermis, cortex, and stele is seen. And apart from this, the stem can grow erect or prostrate. It can grow erect or prostrate. In pteridophyte, in some pteridophyte, underground stem which is known as rhizome, underground stem which is known as a rhizome is seen. And this rhizome is found in case of Dryopteris, or we call Dryopteris, which is a pteridophyte, as aspidium. We call it as a aspidium. And in aspidium, this rhizome or particularly is known as a rootstock. So rootstock is an unbranched rhizome. They have no branching, and without branching, this rhizome is seen as an underground stem in case of Dryopteris or Aspidium. Now, apart from this, next we talk about leaves. Okay, so if we talk about leaf, we come to know that they have a true leaves, and the leaves are of two types. One is trophophils and one is megaphils. Sorry, sporophils. Trophophils, and another one is the sporophils. Now they have a true body, that is sporophytic body, and on this these two type of leaves can be found present. Now when we talk about trophophils, trophophils are the known as vegetative leaves. They are known as vegetative leaves, means non-reproductive leaves, means they do not bear sporangium. Okay, so this do not bear particular sporangium, so they are not able to produce a spore. So these are normal photosynthetic seeds, photosynthetic leaves. Whereas sporophylls are known as non-vegetative or reproductive leaves. And if they are the reproductive leaves, then they bear or they have sporangia. And this sporangia, if we talk, this sporangia, if we talk, they are present over this that produce spore. So if they produce spore, because of this, they are known as what? As sporophylls. So sporophylls are the spore producing leaves. Okay, they are the spore producing leaves. Now, on these sporophylls, you will find the sporangia in a group, and that group is known as sorus. Remember, the sporangia form a group. So the group of sporangia is known as group of sporangia is known as group of sporangia is known as sorus, and the plural term for this sorus is sori. Okay, so this group of sorus, that is a plural term, is sori. It is a sori, sori. Okay, and this is a sorus. Okay, so for sporangia, the singular is sporangium. Singular is sporangium. And sporangium is nothing but a spore producing body. What is sporangium? Sporangium is a spore producing body. So this type of two leaves can be seen in case of the plant of pteridophyte. Okay. Now, so sporophylls are also photosynthetic. It is not like that. Not like that. Sporophylls are only involved in reproduction. They also perform photosynthesis. Okay, so this is the thing with respect to this two type of leaves. Now, after trophophills and sporophills, these sporophills can form a group, and this group of sporophyll is known as cone, or we can say strobilus. So, sporophylls, which are the reproductive leaves that form a group known as known as strobilus or cone, and this strobilus or cone can be loose or compact. Okay, apart from this, based on size of leaves, pteridophyte are of two types. Pteridophyte are of two types based on size of leaves, and they are of two type based on size of leaves. And if we talk about their based on size, they are known as microphilous pteridophyte and megaphilous pteridophyte. And another one is megaphilous pteridophytes. This microphilous pteridophyte, if we talk, they have particularly smaller leaves, but stem is larger. They have small sized leaves and stem is larger. And this which have a small size leaves and stem are larger than the small sized leaves are microphylls. Because of this, they are known as microphilous pteridophyte. An example of microphilous pteridophyte, if we take, that is Selaginella, okay, Lycopodium, okay, these all are small sized pteridophyte. But megaphilous pteridophyte have large sized large sized leaves and small stem, then they are known as megaphilous pteridophyte. This large sized leaves, they have large sized leaves, and that large sized leaves are known as megaphylls. They are known as megaphylls or fronds. Megaphylls or fronds. And the example of this is fern plant. And fern, one of the known example that you need to remember, that is Dryopteris. Okay, so this is the thing with respect to this two type of leaves based on the size. So as we have discussed, leaf, the pteridophyta have leaves in pteridophyta are small, they are known as microphytes as in Selaginella, and large macrophytes as in ferns. There are sporophytes be sporangia that are subtended by a leaf-like appendage called sporophyll. Means these sporangia are present on the sporophylls. Okay, so this you can see. This is the sporophyll diagram in which the sporangia is present, which is a spore-producing body, that is a sporangium. Okay, so this is the some of the things which are related to the pteridophyte and their some of the characteristic with respect to differentiation. Now, if we talk about pteridophyte, this pteridophyte are called as vascular cryptogams. They are known as vascular cryptogams. Vascular cryptogams, as we have discussed this also, that they have vascular tissues and they are cytoplasmic. Okay. Apart from this, it is known that pteridophytes are not completely successful terrestrial plant. Are not completely successful terrestrial plants. So why they are not completely successful terrestrial plant? Because if we see, they still need water for fertilization. What is the thing? They need a water for fertilization. So because of this, they are not completely successful terrestrial plant. Okay. Now, so this all are the nothing but what some of the general characteristic of plant kingdom. They are also known as vascular amphibians of plant kingdom. So they are also known as vascular amphibians of plant kingdom because they have vascular tissue and they are also still a they are terrestrial plants. Still, they need a water for fertilization. They are amphibians of plant kingdom. Okay. So now, after this general characteristic, we are going to talk about the life cycle. And if we talk about the life cycle of this pteridophyte, we come to note down some of the characteristic. In life cycle, we come to know that they have two stages. One is sporophyte and one is gametophyte. The sporophyte is dominant phase in the life cycle of pteridophyte, and the another phase is known as gametophyte, and this gametophyte is the dependent. This is a recessive phase, we can say, but this is diploid, this is haploid. In a bryophyte, we have studied that gametophyte is dominant and sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. But in life cycle of pteridophyte, sporophyte is dominant phase and it is a recessive phase. And this sporophyte is dominant and independent and free living. Whereas in case of this also, the gametophyte is independent and free living. This sporophyte is a dominant body, so it is a free living, independent, and it is differentiated into root, stem, and leaf. And this gametophyte, in gametophyte, this is also known as prothallus. So this is the some of the characteristic of body. As we know that sporophyte is a spore producing body and gametophyte is a gamete producing body. So this is the important thing with respect to sporophyte and gametophyte, two structures of their life cycle. Now, if we talk about the life cycle by in a particular diagrammatic matter, then we come to know that in this the spore producing body, the sporophyte is dominant. Okay, so I am writing here sporophyte, which is the dominant body. Now, sporophyte is a plant body which is a diploid, so it has sporophylls. And if we talk about sporophylls, these sporophylls are the reproductive leaves and these are diploid. Now, in sporophylls, we come to know that sporophylls are known as sporophylls because they bear sporangia. So they bear or they have sporangia. And sporangia are obviously a group of sporangium or a plural of sporangium, a spore producing body. So this each sporangia have spore mother cell, and spore mother cell undergo meiosis to produce a spore. Now this spore on germination produce a gametophytic body. Germination and form prothallus or gametophyte, because prothallus is known as gametophyte is known as prothallus in case of pteridophyte. Now this gametophyte or prothallus have or bear male sex organ and female sex organ, and that male sex organ is known as antheridium, and this antheridium is haploid as prothallus is also haploid because it's developing from the spore which is haploid. Now this antheridium is a male sex organ, and another one is the archegonium. That archegonium is also haploid and it is a female sex organ. Now this antheridium have an anthrozoid mother cell which produce particularly anthrozoid or male gamete, or male gamete, and this anthrozoid are multiflagellated. In case of bryophyte, we have studied that this anthrozoid or male gamete are not multi, they are biflagellated, but in pteridophyte they are multiflagellated, which are produced from the anthrozoid mother cell by a mitosis in the antheridium. But in archegonia, egg mother cell is there that is also producing a egg. Now, egg and anthrozoid or multiflagellated anthrozoid fertilize or undergo syngamy and produce zygote. And this zygote particularly form embryo. From embryo. And this embryo on division produce sporophyte. Now see, if we see here what a syngamy or fertilization occur here of male and female gamete and diploid state get established. Diploid state get established. Now see, if this zygote is there, obviously you know that zygote is always diploid. So embryo is obviously diploid. Okay. Then sporophyte is obviously diploid. Then sporophyll is diploid. Sporangia are diploid. Spore mother cell is also diploid. But after meiosis, the spore is haploid. And from the spore, the haploid generation starts, gametophytic generation starts, and it continue up to the gametes. Now here, up to this stage, all structures are haploid. And we can see the particular stages which are seen above this line, they represent sporophytic generation. Whereas when we talk about this haploid stages, they represent gametophytic generation. This represents gametophytic generation. This represents sporophytic generation. So like this, the particular whole life cycle continues in case of the pteridophyte. Now, after understanding this life cycle, if we note out some of the points from this life cycle which we have understood, then we can note down that in the life cycle of sporophyte, the diploid stage is sporophyte, which is a spore producing body. The gametophyte they have, that is a gametophytic body, and that particular can have both antheridium and ovonium in the one particular thallus, or one actually prothallus or gametophyte. So if you want to understand, first thing we come to know that the spore is produced by the spore mother cell, and spore can be of one type or two type. So if we talk about pteridophyte, this pteridophyte are of two type. Can be homosporous and can be heterosporous. So homosporous pteridophyte produce only one type or kind of spore, whereas heterosporous produce two types of spore. So if homosporous pteridophyte produce only one type of spore and heterosporous produce two type of spore, so if homosporous produce only one type of spore, then this one spore is going to form one prothallus or one gametophyte. Means this one spore will produce monoecious gametophyte or prothallus. And this prothallus, a single prothallus or single gametophyte, have both male sex organ, that is antheridium, and female sex organ, that is archegonium. But in heterosporous, these two spore are known as microspore and megaspore. This microspore form male gametophyte male gametophyte and megaspore form female gametophyte. So this male gametophyte and female gametophyte, these two type of gametophyte are produced by these two spores. So means they produce this heterospore stereophyte produce dioecious dioecious gametophyte. They produce dioecious gametophyte. Okay. So this is the thing about the homosporous and heterosporous stereotype. But the question which you will get in exam, that majority of pteridophyte are of which type? So most of pteridophyte are of homosporous type. They produce only one type of spore. Now we have to note down the example of homosporous pteridophyte and heterosporous pteridophyte. So if we talk about homosporous pteridophyte, then if you note down the examples, then the homosporous pteridophyte, if we talk examples, then they are actually the fern plants. And in fern plants, if we talk about Dryopteris, if you talk about Adiantum, then they are actually homosporous. But if we talk about heterosporous pteridophyte, then in heterosporous pteridophyte, we come to know that there is an example like Selaginella and Salvinia. Other some examples include the fern plants like Pteris and Pteridium, and all these are a particular type of homosporous pteridophyte. Okay, so we will understand some of the example later on this part in a continuation of this chapter. Okay, so I hope you all are getting this point. You are understanding the life cycle. Now, in life cycle, it is known that the spore which is produced by the meiosis of particular spore mother cell, it is going to germinate and form a gametophyte or prothallus that we have discussed. So, if that gamet spore germination occur outside any body, because these both are independent, means the germination is occurring outside the sporophytic body. So, we can say in pteridophyte, germination of spore is exosporic. Exosporic means outside the body on a parent body on a soil. Another thing is that on spore germination, the prothallus or gametophyte is produced. Now, this prothallus, if we define according to NCRT, then it is come to know that it is a inconspicuous. It is a inconspicuous means which is not clearly visible. Inconspicuous, small, and multicellular gametophyte. Multicellular gametophyte. It is a inconspicuous, small, and multicellular gametophyte. But this inconspicuous, small, and multicellular gametophyte is formed by germination of spore, and it is known as prothallus. And this formation of gametophyte is taking place on the soil. Therefore, this prothallus or gametophyte is free living, independent, and mostly photosynthetic. Okay, so this is the characteristic of prothallus. Now, this gametophyte generally grow required cool, damp, shady places as we have seen, as we have studied. And because of this specific requirement, restricted requirement, they need water for fertilization. So because of this, the spread of living pteridophyte is limited and restricted to the narrow geographical region. So we remember this spread of living pteridophyte, the spread of living pteridophyte is restricted to a narrow geographical region. Is limited and restricted restricted to narrow geographical region. Means they are not found everywhere. They are found to the specific areas where they can complete their requirement of water. Now, if we talk about this life cycle, by understanding this gametophyte, we come to know that this both sporophyte and gametophyte have no relation with each other. So because of this, prothallus is made up of thallus and rhizoid. This prothallus is actually considered as non-vascular because vascular tissue are found in case of the sporophytic body. Okay, and in plant kingdom, whole plant kingdom, you will study that, and you will come to understand that any prothallus or any gametophyte has no vascular tissue. Only sporophytic body contain a vascular tissue because from pteridophyte vascular tissues have evolved, and from pteridophyte onwards, you will see the dominant phase that is a sporophyte. So sporophyte have a this non-vascular tissues gametophyte cannot have. Okay. Now after this, we come to know that by understanding the life cycle, we come to understand that, and we can understand that the sex organ formation taking place on the gametophyte, the male sex organ is antheridium, female sex organ is archegonium. Antheridia produce a male gamete and archegonia produce the egg cell. But the anthrozoids or male gamete which are produced by the antheridium, that antherozoid or multiflagellated male gamete are produced. But exceptionally, one example of pteridophyte is that whose name is Selaginella. That Selaginella have biflagellated and spindle-shaped antherozoid or male gamete. Obviously, egg is formed in archegonium, which is non-motile, and fertilization need a water. So fertilization occur by a zoodiogamy. Fertilization takes place by zooidiogamy. This zooidiogamy means they need a water for the fertilization. And after fertilization, zygote will develop into the embryo, and paired embryo will develop into the sporophytic body, which has a root, stem, and leaf. So this is the whole life cycle. Now, after understanding whole life cycle, we come to know that life cycle is diplohaplontic. What do we understand? Life cycle is diplohaplontic. So diplohaplontic life cycle is seen. And in this, both gametophyte and sporophyte are independent. So they have an independent alteration of generation. However, in pteridophyte there is independent alteration of generation. And this independent alteration of generation, if we talk, then this independent alteration of generation means the both sporophyte and gametophyte are independent of each other, and this independent alteration of generation in life cycle is the unique character of a life cycle of pteridophyte. It is a unique character, unique character of life cycle of pteridophyte. Okay, so this is the points related to the life cycle. Now in life cycle, after understanding this many things, we are clear with what are pteridophytes. But in pteridophytes, so many groups have created. So now onwards, we are going to talk about the particularly classes of pteridophyta. In the pteridophyta division, we are going to understand four classes. So before that, we should understand this, that development of sporangiate may be leptosporangiate or eusporangiate. Dear student, if you understand this particularly in detail, we come to know that there is a different development things. Okay. So here, when we talk about the development of sporangium, which is developing on a sporophylls, that may be leptosporangiate or eusporangiate, as you can see here. And the sporangium produce spores by the meiosis in spore mother cell. That is their function. But the question is, what do you mean by this leptosporangiate and eusporangiate? So it is known that leptosporangiate means the sporangium developed from a single cell. The sporangium in leptosporangiate, sporangium, if we talk, it developed from single cell. And such a development is found in case of the fern plant, that is Dryopteris and Adiantum. Whereas if we talk about the eusporangiate, this eusporangiate development of sporangium means sporangium does not develop from single cell, but sporangium develop from group of cells, and group of cells which form a sporangium For that, the example is Selaginella and equisetum. Selaginella and equisetum. So this is the thing which is seen in case of particularly a development of sporangium. Now, in majority of the pteridophyte, all the spores are of similar kind as we have discussed. They are homosporous. General like Selaginella and Salvinia produce two kind of spore. They are heterosporous, majority but are homosporous. And you can see this is the particular Salvinia. You can see this is the Selaginella, okay, and this is Salvinia. We will discuss about them in detail in first because in some cases sporophylls may form a distinct compact structure called strobili or cone that also we have discussed. In that what happens, the sporophyll form a group that is known as strobili or cone. And you can see in this diagram that at the end you can see this picture. These are representing the strobilus or cone. Now apart from this, in equisetum also you will find this compact structure. See, in this Selaginella, these particular are somewhat loose, not too much compact, but these are the particularly strobilus or cone of a equisetum, and in equisetum they are compactly arranged, so they are compact. Okay, then if we talk about the spore that germinate to form an inconspicuous small but material free living mostly photosynthetic thyroid gametophyte that is known as protheli or prothellus that we have discussed, and the gametophyte require cool damp and steady places. You can see this is the prothellus diagram of fern, and in this prothellus you can see this is sporophyte. This is a prothellus, this is a rhizoids, and this is sporophytic body. They have some root-like structure. They are known as rhizoids. Then, due to the need of water, the spread of living pteridophyte is limited and restricted to the narrow geographical region. We have discussed that gametophyte bear male and female soil, and that also we know that. You can see these are the antheridia and archegonia as labeled in this particular fern gametophyte. The sex organ are multicellular and jacketed and sessile. Sessile means they do not have a stalk. Stalk is absent. Suppose this is the sex organ and this is a stalk. So such type of stalk is not found in case of the pteridophyte. Okay, and but in bryophyte we have discussed the presence of stalk. Stalk. Okay, multicellular and jacketed sex organ both are found in case of the bryophyte and pteridophyte. So in heterosporous plant, we come to know that the megaspore and microspore particularly germinate to form a male and female gametophyte respectively, and water is required for the transfer of anthrozoidy. That also we have discussed. The male gamete fuses with the egg that is present in the archegonium and form a zygote. The male gamete released from the antheridium to the mouth of archegonium. So male gamete are released and they reach to the mouth of archegonium, and this fertilization is called zoodiagamy due to the presence of what need of water for fertilization. Now see, one more important point that you need to note down here, and that is male gamete, or we can say multicellular anthrozoid, sorry, multiflagellated, I'm writing multicellular, multiflagellated anthrozoids are attracted to neck of archegonia by chemotactic method. So by the chemotactic method, or due to the chemical stimulus which is released by the archegonia, neck of archegonia, the multifaceted anthrozoids are attracted toward this. And in this chemotactic movement of water, chemical stimulus is malic acid. Okay, dear students. So this is the thing about the particular detailed life cycle in case of this. One more thing if we talk, then now we are going to talk about their classification, their classes. And it is known that pteridophytes are further classified into four classes. And if you talk about the name of the four classes are, first one is a Psilopsida, that is Xylotum, in which we will study the example Xylotum. Another class is Lycopsida. Third is Spinopsida. In Lycopsida, the members are Selaginella and Lycopodium. We will discuss that. In Spinopsida, Equisetum is there. And in Pteropsida, Dryopteris, Pteris, and Adiantum are there. And they are commonly called ferns. Okay. So, dear students, in next class, we will be discussing these four classes. Okay, in detail. Okay. So, dear students, till that, thank you and have a nice day.